We're talking about history of Kenya up to the year 1895. On our course outline, the course outline has the history of Kenya from the earliest and to the present era. That is, since Kenya was declared a British protectorate and to this time when Kenya became independent. Well, so the outline talks of the emergence of Kenyan communities as the first aspect of the history of Kenya. Then we will talk about production, distribution, and exchange patterns of the pre-colonial community. Then we'll talk about urbanization. After some time, then colonialism sets in. So these are the events that takes place. We talk about this. So the social and political developments during colonialism is where we shall be going through and talk of the post-independence social, economic, and political challenges and impacts in Kenya. So Kenya having an area of 582,646 square kilometers, we have water of 13,393 square kilometers. So we start with the Anglo-German agreements between the British, Germany, and the Sultan of Zanzibar. Why this? So this is because of the geographical setting. We get to see the geographical setting is about the coastal plain, the lowland, that is the plateaus of course, then the Kenyan highlands, and then the Lake Victoria Basin. Talking of the coastal plain, we have the coral reefs, mangroves, the tropical trees, the Galan and Sabaki rivers. These are some of the examples of this geographical setting as the coastal, the lake region, the low plateaus, and the Kenyan highlands. So, talking of the coastal plain, the rains by the monsoon winds from the ocean. Rains are brought by the monsoon winds and the foreign invaders, Greeks, Arabs, Portuguese, British, came through this coastal region through the Indian Ocean. So the coastal harbors were used as maritime commerce for several centuries. Talking of the low plateaus, we have the low plateaus covers the largest region. It covers the largest region of around 2/3 of the most arid parts. What are these arid parts? These are the more dry parts. So from Kenya to Tanzania border to the south, these are where the low plateaus take place and range from. They range from the southern border to the northern part of Kenya, and they experience high temperature due to the weather, temperatures, infrequent and low rainfall of under 508 millimeters. So, characteristics of the low plateaus. We have pastoralists. Why? Livestock keeping and pastoralism. Then the Tsavo Parks and the Amboseli National Park are found in the low plateaus. The Kenyan highlands, that is the plateaus and the volcanic landscapes of about 915 meters east to 1520 meters west. The two highlands are the Western and the Western Highlands. So these are broken through the Great Rift Valley that runs from Ethiopia from the north to Tanzania downwards. Rainfall in the Kenyan highlands, this is the best place you can have agriculture, you can have the good climate, the fertile soils, and therefore, cash crop farming, whatever. That is what we can talk about when we're talking about the Kenya highlands. So the lake region, Lake Victoria Basin, covers the lake region that slopes from the Western Highlands towards Lake Victoria, and that is where we have the rainfall of 763 millimeters annually. Chad, East Africa, Tanzania, and of course Uganda. You can live around Uganda. So Kenyan lake fed by the rivers River Gucha, River Sondu, River Nyando, River Yala of the western region where I come from, and the Nzoia River. What about the Sio River? If for irrigation, it is for agricultural potential. But then, we don't do much of agriculture. So the early inhabitants of Kenya, this is our main aim of talking about the history of Kenya. So we have Charles Darwin's evolution theory that runs from 1809 to 1882. Then the important archaeological sites in East Africa, we get to find Africans, Asians, Europeans, and the Arabic origins as one of these early inhabitants of Kenya. We have the 98% Kenyans of African origin when talking about the history of Kenya. So the origin of species by the natural selection theory. We have this natural selection theory that the theory states all living evolved over millions of years ago from simple living cell to complex plants and animals we have today. We have different types of plants and animals. That is, man's origin was the primate which gradually evolved, to ape-like ancestors, or should I say ape-like creatures? Okay, fine. The archaeological evidence shows that the East Africa is the cradle of mankind. So this is where a question we have to ask ourselves. Why is Africa seen as the cradle of mankind? That is a question we are going to answer after the end of the lesson. So the archaeological sites found in East Africa is before the earth moths, that is the Rift Valley, and the archaeological sites we have the Rusinga Island, Fort Tanan near Kericho. Those are the two: Rusinga Island, Fort Tanan near Kericho, Kariandusi, the Gambles Cave, Ochosahile near Magadi, the Kobe Fora near Lake Turkana, and the Hyrax Hill in Nakuru. So the oldest remains of the Dryopithecus africanus are found in Rusinga Island in Lake Victoria. So the Kenyapithecus remains in the year 1961 were found at Fort Tanan by the Leakeys. Who are the Leakeys? This is Mary Leakey and John Leakey. These are the wife and husband that are our archaeologists. So the Samburu Hills has the Lake Baringo and Turkana Basin. That is where we get to find the have the canines are shorter, they walk on two legs. Australopithecus are also found in East Africa. This is some of the reasons we get to find Africa as the cradle of mankind. That is, Mary Leakey remains of Zinjanthropus. She's the one who finds the remains of the Zinjanthropus that Tanzania at the old Dubai Gorge, and this is evidence that East Africa is a cradle of mankind, more so Kenya, as we find the savanna grassland that the climate is favorable. These prehistoric sites that are found in these artifacts, are the reason we get to see Kenya as the cradle of mankind. The Homo habilis and the Homo erectus are the big brain man. That is, they lived in Kenya near Nariokotome River. That is, it is found in some place. Nariokotome River. I don't know the place specifically, but what I know is the evidence is still being unearthed why Kenya is seen as the cradle of mankind, and this is through most of these artifacts and the prehistoric sites you get to find. So you find this interesting. And talking of early inhabitants, we have the hunter-gatherer families, the Kenya inhabited by the Stone Age people of the Khoisan stock. That is the language with the click sound. That is, the Okiek follows this Khoisan stock from the Rift Valley at the river. That is, the southern Kushites are the Mbugu of Usambara. We have the Halo, Sanye of Tana, Ira of TZ, and the mixed farmers after the hunter-gatherers and pastoralists. We have Sirigwa and Dahomey. Dahomey are found in the Western Highlands and the Rift Valley. That is, our mixed farmers. Archaeological and linguistic evidence tools are the grindstones, the pestle stones, pots, and bowls, and all these stuff that you get to witness The animal bones are evidences of mixed farming. So mixed farmers had a greater control over their environment. That is, the domestication of plants and animals facilitated food supply, population growth. That is, after food, after all, if there is food, there is population. People get to reproduce and get to find that the semi-permanent and permanent settlements are getting to be installed in place. That is, talking of the social differentiation, professional specialization, that is technological innovations, and the socio-economic and political expansion foundation for a strong Kenya civilization today, that is mixed farming. It has all these qualities. Then talking of this Kenyan emergence of the Kenyan communities, which are with the Bantu group that has at the coastal eastern highlands from Mount Kenya, Kwale, and all the sorts of stuff. We have the second group, that is the Nilotes, Highland Nilotes, the Plain Nilotes, and Western Highland. That is the Western Highlands. Then we have the Kusha group. At the beginning of the Christian era, we have the Bantus, or the Bantus. They do not genetically constitute an ethnic group, but they are united by two outstanding features: their grouping of words and the agreement of adjectives. This is an interesting group of all origins because it's the largest single language family, because they migrated for various reasons. So these various reasons may be in concurrence to each other, and we have to say the need of fertile land. After all, who doesn't want fertile land? Farming, you know, you get to have population pressure makes a person try to migrate, to these settlements. We have the internal and external conflict, the epidemics, droughts, famine. Iron technology was the key role of the African migration. Due to iron technology, there was massive population growth among the Bantus and the greater degree in control, that is firearms. These firearms are made of iron, nothing else. We get to talk further cultural developments like hunters, ways, So the Eastern Bantus comprises of the Akamba, Aembu, Pokomo, Agikuyu, Ameru, the Taita Taveta, and the Mijikenda. Talking of the Western Bantus, that is the second group of the Bantu-speaking people. We have the Abaluya, Abagusi, and Abakuria. They intermarried, mark that intermarriage. Pioneer uses of the iron technology. There was this clearing forests and then cultivation. Wow, voila. We have the Nilotes as our second Kenyan community after the Bantus. So who are the Nilotes? They migrated from the Nile River Valley, that is found in the northeastern of Africa, including Sudan, Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. That is the Nilotic influence. According to the 25th, the second largest after the Bantus. So the Bantus are the highest numbers, followed by the Nilotes, where we have the three groups of the Nilotes: the Highland Nilotes, the Plain Nilotes, and the River Lake Nilotes. So talking of the River Lake Nilotes, I'll start with the River Lake Nilotes, which is a bit not more complicated. They are of the Sudan, Uganda, and Tanzania. That is the Dinka, Nuer, and of Sudan. They arrived includes archaeological, linguistics, and oral traditions that marks the evidence originated from the southwestern part of Ethiopia. The Plain Nilotes, we have the Masai, Samburu, Teso, Karamojong of Uganda, the Bari, the Kulkuk, Kakao of Sudan. So the Bari, Kulkuk, Kakao of Sudan, these are the Plain Nilotes of Sudan. The Highland Nilotes are a few of the Kalenjin River Lake. Ancestors at Dadog and the Okiek are some of these Highland Nilotes. So it might be a bit confusing, but we'll just have to talk about their reasons. Escape from drought and famine, common with the Bantus. Internal and external attacks, conflicts, mark that. Also among the Bantu-speaking group, they need to look for more and better pastures. So These plain Nilotes mostly are the people for better pastures, the pastoralist group. The Kenyan River Lake Nilotes from the east to the west of um, Sudan before moving to Uganda. That is the Acholi and the Pachola of Uganda. So, talking of this, we get to see the breaking site of the Bahr el Ghazal in Sudan and the western parts of Kenya. So, the subdivision itself, we have the Joka Jok as the River Lake Nilotes, the first group that moved of the River Lake Nilotes, the Joka Jok, Joka Owinyi, and Joka Omola. Then we have the Luo Abasuba. They can come on. I was convulsing. Sorry. So it's a problem I have after registering some issues. But then, excuse me. Shall continue. The interactions with the Bantus and the Nilot was very high. So the nomadic lifestyle predisposed them to warfare and cattle rustling. The third group is the Cushitic group. The Cushitic group, the original Central Ethiopia, they were in five groups. Their dialects: Oromo, Konso, Boran, Somali, Kambala, Tamaro, Sidamo, and Darasa. The Eastern Kushites, that is the Sam speakers. They were known as the Sam speakers. These are the Oromo, Rendile, Gabra, Somali, Northern Kenyan Plains, the Omo, East River Valley. Do you understand? Really? Or, history is a theory and I have to explain a lot. I talk a lot because I'm a historian, and historians talk a lot and they get to explain these important concepts. So, these Eastern Kushites spread to the southern Ethiopian highlands in two independent movements. Turkana El Molo in this movement. Portuguese write about the Oromo really well. The Entembali in the year 1537. I was not born. I don't think if my great-great-grandfather was born, but that is history. So we have the intercultural relations with others, interaction. Mark that. Significance and complex migration of Kenyan people. We get the movement due to economic factors and drought, famine, diseases. Political factors are internal and external factors. All this makes us have the end of this discussion, but then the topic is vast, is huge, and we are going to move to the next subtopic, that is the production, distribution, and exchange patterns of the pre-colonial communities. So the first petite factor is the food production. Hunting and gathering was the best method that was used in difficult circumstances, but depends on the nature of the food. That is the flora and the fauna. Is it the flora and fauna theory we get to talk about? So, fauna for food, flora for food also. This is nature. Like this. Agriculture began around 300 years ago. In production, evidence presents of stone bowels, pestles, and mortars at the Njoro River Cave in Nakuru, are some of the evidences that really food production is really something we go for. So the crops grown were the maize, millet, root tubers. Pastoralism was a way of food production. The Portuguese brought in bananas, the maize, sugarcane, coconut, yams, rice. These good stuffs that we get to feed on today. Actually, the Portuguese brought in some really weird stuff, coconut, the maize. Where would you as a human being find such? So pastoralism, that is animal keeping for cultivation, was also an alternative used for stable economic activity. The Maasai, Somali, Turkana were livestock keepers. The forms of wealth, clothing, weapons, and manure. Livestock. That is for the pastoralists. So my computer is off, but then the next after food production, we have trade. The first thing, we have the subsistence trade that was during the pre-colonial period, mutual benefit exchange and goods and trade. So, the Abagusi were cultivators with the Luo Nyanza. Abagusi, some were livestock keepers and they did basketry, fishing. Luos were iron articles, grains and vegetables in the trade era. The Eastern Highlands were the ecology and climate in foodstuffs for exchange and subsistence. The Luo and the Luya traded with each other. Uganda, Basoga, Bagishu, Baganda were all through this mode of interaction and communication. The Mount Kenya people, the bananas, grains, yams, gourds, tobacco, red ochre, potatoes, and the iron ore. The Maasai had livestock, hides, the beads, the leather cloaks. The Akamba people, snuff boxes, poisons, medicine, charms, bows, arrows, tobacco, and the Agikuyu themselves. Some who, they went through long distance trade, salt, cowrie shells, food, and livestock. The first markets grew, second dynamic exchange of goodwill through the Akamba. The third population increase, Kitui region for wild games and poisoner extraction. Getting to talk about the colonial era. The colonial era took more than 60 years. So Kenya being declared a protectorate, Kenya came in just as she wanted to protect Uganda and the Nile Valley. The German involvement in Tanganyika, except Zanzibar Strait, then rivalry over Uganda. Kenya was a British protectorate in the year 1895. That is 15th June 1895. Kenya became a British protectorate. Mark that date. It is very important to you as a student. Why Kenya be made a British protectorate or a British colony? The British wanted to protect the value of the East Coast Africa. It was of high importance. Navigation, trade, it would lead them to control everything. Then the control over Uganda and the Nile Valley is also important. So there were these agreements of the Anglo-German agreements that is made in Tanganyika, the exception of Zanzibar, the coastal strait. Then the Heligoland Treaty over Uganda was mentioning that the British protectorate of Zanzibar, Uganda, Pemba, and the Witu, and British had to recognize that Germany had Tanganyika. Tanganyika as Heligoland Island. So that is the way it comes in place of the Heligoland Treaty. So there is this island that was isolated that the Germans had to control. So that is why they had to agree with the Heligoland Treaty. So in the year 1888, the Imperial British East African Company, it was made to look after the East African Protectorate, and British had to acquire these spheres of influence, protect then exploit their natural resources, develop spheres, eradicate slavery and slave trade, protect missionaries. These were some of the real reasons that the company had to offer. So what were the importances of this protectorate? They were a place of surplus capital, strategic importance, of administration. Then this place acted really, really good for the market for European manufactured goods. Then, of course, the source of raw materials, you never see by that. Then, 1st July, the year 1895, Declaration of protectorate of the British administration. That is, talking about the first commissioner, who was Arthur Hardinge. He resisted. The Mazrui family, Abagusi Nandi, Gikuyu, the Luo and Abaluya, some collaborated. At the long run, they were defeated and they had to collaborate. But the main collaborators were the Wangas, some section of the Abaluya, Masai, section of Akamba, and the Luo and the Gikuyu all in turn had to collaborate. They couldn't match the British. Uganda, port of Lorraine. The railway was put up in 1901. That comes from Port Florence to Uganda. So, the Indian coolies were invited to build up the railway. But then, they had other plans after that. They settled for trade, commerce, and they couldn't go back home. Then the colonial economy rose up, and the economy was self-financing and viable, because the settlers make Kenyans economically self-sustaining. They had growth of cash crops like coffee, sisal, onset of land reforms, land alienation, 1897, that year is when the land reforms set in. So, the East African Lands Order in the year 1902, the Crown Land Ordinances in the year 1915, the creation of reserves, the Nandi and the Gikuyu reserves, the Baluya were all put in reserves because they were natives Africa, that is land alienation. So the white settlers had to offer, the Africans had to offer the white settlers the African labor. So the Africans were alienated just as to get labor. Hard tax was put in place just so that the Africans forcefully had to offer labor to the white settlers. 16 years and above of age men were to pay 3 rupees with forced labor per year. Forced labor was instilled by the chiefs. Oh, too bad. In the year 1920, introduction of the Kipande system. Without the Kipande system, you are punished severely, and these people were denied growing of these cash crops. They would compete with the white settlers. What were the consequences of the colonial land policies? Land alienation, 1. Migration to urban centers, 2. Altered laws of indigenous people. Their lives were really messed with. Then there was quarter settlement, wasn't it? Because they couldn't manage to get these farms settlement. They were denied their normal livelihoods. Then they were angered. The Mau Mau setting. That is where nationalism and the decolonization period sets in. Interesting. What is nationalism? Nationalism is a great pride, and the reform-oriented movements were formed. Improving of African welfare, demanding of independence. These were some of the advocacies and ideologies of these nationalistic groups. The First World War. There was much interaction between the British and the Africans. Improving African welfare, demanding of independence. Then the Africans had to know the weaknesses of the white settlers. And it came too fast. Africans and Asians were not rewarded, and they all were also expatriates of the war. The British were rewarded against poll tax and hard tax. After this war, the change of Kenya to a colony again from a protectorate, it really angered them, and they were like, nah, we can't do this. They had to form these association and nationalistic groups that would help advocate for their independence. Really a nice story. I don't know if it is a story. If you're getting this is going to help you really, really well. So the Kikuyu Association was the first which advocated for land not to be alienated. Josiah Njonjo was the head of the Kikuyu Association. Then Young Kikuyu Association set in, and this was among for the Nairobi elders, the likes of Harry Duku, after he was arrested in the year 1st March 1922. He was arrested and the group was like dead. And then Kikuyu Central Association jets in with Joseph Kang'ethe and Josiah Mwangi Kariuki, Jesse Kariuki, and James Butita. Is it Butita or Beuta? Yeah, Beuta, not Butita. Butita is a common, should I say, a comedian here, so it really rings in my mind, but it's Beuta. In the year 1928, Jomo Kenyatta was made the Secretary General after being released from prison. What were the demands? As Muigai Thanya set in, there was free primary education advocacy, Kipande abolition, the Legislative Council. Africans were to have representatives in the Legislative Council. So, Release Harry Thuku was also a scheme that the Secretary General Jomo Kenyatta instigated, that it might be dealt with. So they wanted to reject the East Africa Federation. What do we mean? In the year 1929, Jomo Kenyatta went to London, of course, to represent the grievances of these African leaders with some other members of the Kikuyu Central Association. Bwindi Mbingu was an Akamba man who advocated for nationalism, mainly centered on social and economic issues rather than political and colonization issues. It wasn't that much. So decolonization started taking place in the year 1945. What was the reason for decolonization? Talking of that, we get to go to economic independence, the cultural removal of identity and integrity, and the British were weak after World War II. The Marshall Plan, the USA comes in, starts helping them, but then they are still weak. In the year 1941, the US President Roosevelt signed the Atlantic Charter, where the ex-soldiers were rewarded, but then the colonial policy and African nationalism set in from the year 1945 to the year 1963. This was due to modern technology. Mechanization was the onset, where squatters and poverty due to migration of natives to urban centers from the reserves. Why were these? Forced labor, unemployment, not enough places to stay. They have to move and look for sophisticated places they can settle in. So we have the trade militant unionism in the year 1940s, the Mau Mau set in as the second half of the 1940s. Wow, this is excellent and marvelous. That is when we talk of the Sinatron Plan. What about the Sinatron Plan? Sinatron Plan was a plan that made issuing of title deeds to African natives. So, in the year 1958, what happened? The Lennox Boyd, in the Lennox Boyd Constitution, had to recruit the 14 members to the LegCo, that is Africans and Asians. But then they striked. They were not enough. So they struck and formed the New Kenya Party that advocated for 65 members in the Legislative Council, that is the Agikuyu and the Luos. In the year 1960, the Legislative Council members of KANU, then KADU was formed because it was not satisfied with the Kanu. It was like, Kanu is kind of tribalistic, ethnistic. They formed KADU and Ronald Ngala, Moi, and is it Masinde Muliro? They formed KADU. KANU wins the election in the year 1961, but they don't form government. In the year 1962, the Lancaster House Conference was held, and then they decided to make Kenya a federal country, then making a federal constitution. Wow, really wonderful. Wonderful history. So the Lancaster House Conference advocated for two houses, the upper house and the lower houses, which had to form in the year 1963. KANU won the election, and Kenyatta was the first prime minister of KANU, that is the Kenyan government, and on the 12th December 1963, Kenya got in self-governance, making it fully republic in the year 1964, 12th December. Wow. I wish I were there during this, these times of... Talking of the economic and social development since 1963, what do you understand by that? Starting with the economic problems of Kenya, there was stagnation of investments. Why? The white settlers had the majority. Africans, they are on the other side. That is left alone, out, and nothing matches. Landlessness. Due to alienation of land, there is no agriculture, no land, nothing, landlessness. Then we have the economic disparity, because the former white highlands were rich in this stuff, water, transport. Then the economy of two different ethnic parts. So we have overpopulation in urban areas due to migration of these rural to urban migration. We have problems of control of the economy prior and after the independence. The economy is still low. The white settlers are bankrupt after the war. Social problems, of course, social inequity, corruption, poverty, water problems, transport poverty, gender inequality. These are some of the common problems we get to encounter up to date in this Kenyan of ours today, which never ceases to amaze. But the Kenya is being talked of outside this as Nairobi being a silicon galaxy of innovation. So, in the year 1967, Trade Licensing Act was put in place, and the Agricultural Finance Corporation was formed. The Industrial and Commerce Development Corporation was formed to help farmers have pesticides, insecticide, fertilizers, animal products, to get to improve their economic prosperity. There was unemployment too. So, after this agriculture and agrarian revolution, let's talk of the agrarian reforms. That is, agriculture was the first paying first Kenyan economy of the country. So, transfer of the European farm to African ownership. So, European farms were given to Africans. This is what the first reform, to make Africans get to utilize these lands, to get to have this good economy. Then land consolidation, title deeds being offered to Africans, million acre schemes being formed to Africans in the year 1962. Then we have the Haraka and Shirika schemes. What were these for? These were to settle the landless and the unemployed Africans. Wow, this is a great move. This is why we call the agrarian reforms, to help in facilitation and stimulation of the economy. So we get to talk of growth of tea and coffee for the Africans. Remember, previously, Africans were never to grow cash crops, but then for the agrarian reforms after independence, the British, the colonies is like it stumbled after war. It has economic disparities, weak, and all that. They have to make Africa stand on its own. I'm sorry, this is Kenya we are talking about, not Africa. But then it is an African thing. So it was a great move, Kenya growing sugarcane, tea, coffee. Mumias factory was formed in the year 1974, getting to form in the year 1998, the Nzoia Sugar Factory to help in sugar manufacture as a good export commodity. Getting to talk of the political organization since the year 1963, we get to see KANU and KADU merge together to form government. The delegate conferences under the Mboya Kenyatta factions are the ones that won this. It was not landing on the good side of the 9 provinces that were formed. So those who are over the Oginga Odinga family and the, you're talking of Kina Bildad Kagia, are the people who, let's form the Kenya People's Union in the year 1969. It was disbanded. That is illegal. Why? Do you remember the stoning of Jomo Kenyatta at the Kisumu? It really led to serious death and treason to the government. In the year 1975, J.M. Kariuki was assassinated. Really bad. In the year 1969, 15th July, that is 5th July, the first person assassinated was Thomas, that is Tom Mboya, was assassinated by KANU, of course. Who else? In the year 1975, J.M. Kariuki, a member of the KANU association, was assassinated. It really made the political developments worsen and tension among these coalition groups. Then here comes more political developments. In the year 1978 to 2002, we get to find Jomo Kenyatta dies in the year 1978. Daniel Arap Moi takes over. He releases those detainees. He offers free primary milk schemes. Then he makes Kenya a de jure state. What does that mean? Making Kenya a one-party state. Then the unexpected happened. He was almost impeached from presidency, but then he punished the Kenya Air Force for that, where he introduced the Q voting in the year 1988 due to a personal interest. He gets to elect these client relations, electoral commissions that he appointed, not actually elected. So he won the elections in the year 1992 and 1997 consequently. In 2002, the opposition party brings in Mwai Kibaki to get to defeat KANU government. That is really interesting. Kibaki took over in the year 2002. I think the history of Kenya is not yet ended, but a bit. We still have a few subtopics to cover. I know this one is vast and tense, but then we are going to talk about globalization and its impacts in Kenya. What do we say? Globalization is the growing of interdependence of the world's economy, culture, population brought about by this technology and this cross-border trade in goods and services, investment and information. This is all the stuff we are talking about when we think of globalization. When did globalization set in? Globalization set in at the end of the World War II. You remember the Second World War? Yeah. It is quite indeed the Second World War that led to this. So just give me a minute that I may put my my PC on charging mode. Thank you. So, talking the characteristics of globalization, we get to find the function at the great speeds. Due to globalization, there was great in transport, communication, there was access on greater scale, large scale access of things, services, goods, information, moving, interaction, relations in policy and practice worldwide. That is adoption of the economic, technological, political, and legal cultures of these international and indigenous countries of trade. What is the effect of globalization in Kenya? We start with the negative or the positive effect. After all, the good comes first. We have increase in employment due to our businesses worldwide that are being created for everybody and everyone in the world. Education opportunities from worldwide education. You get to go to France to study. You get to go to UK to study. That is globalization. Number 3, liberal trade. There was trade and commerce everywhere. These countries had to form these trade pacts with these indigenous countries for self sustainability, and life has to continue. Then first, information flow worldwide. The internet has it all. So now we have the 5G network communication, Wi-Fi, social media has it all. We have the increased quality goods and services. Online marketing has been, through the world. We have the decrease in the prices of goods. To stay in market, you have to reduce prices. No one goes for higher purchase prices. The least prices are worth going for. So there was reduced prices for market. So class, those are the positive sides of the globalization. So, getting to move to negative side of globalization. Rapid spread of diseases. Corona imeletwa Kenya. Globalization. These communicable diseases, HIV, AIDS, all from abroad due to globalization. You can't blame anyone. It was due to globalization. So the small-scale industries face extinctions due to the westernized industries are competing with these indigenous ones. You can't say my my bicycle can compete with my motorcycle in a race. That is a lie. It makes a poor country more poorer. Why? These what do I say? Multinational corporations, competition. That is the real thing. Growing disparity between the rich and the poor. The gap between the rich and the poor. The rich can't associate with the poor. If the economics for the rich are more consuming, so the consumers are the rich, the less consumers are the poor. Two different sides. That is a problem. There was unfair working conditions, health conditions, child abuse, forced labor, environmental disorders, degradation. That is the thing. So in this all academic, should I say year, or academic lesson of the history of Kenya, we have to talk of the early urbanization in Kenya. Urbanization is the attraction to urban areas and get to blending. That's really nice. Factors: there was the transport routes, water for irrigation, food, towns, the industrial development, because laborers are going to town. The town, we wanna go to town. We want to have these better stuffs, better resources. Town is better. Urbanization. Commercial activities, trade, the Wanga, Baluya. Religions are in the urban centers. We have the strategic locations. Mining, mining led to development of towns. It helped in urbanization. So transfer of the seat of colonial government in the year 1907. Effect of urbanization, civilization. There was housing, water supply and sanitation, food, economic and social systems were set up, expansive of settlement, urbanization, towns, trade, transport is there, communication is moving up fast. So class, I leave this lecture to that point and would say thank you for the class. I'd love to meet you next time. See you again.